Mr. Fauci, you were quoted on CBS Face the Nation saying it's easy to criticize, but they're really criticizing science because I represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci?
I am a scientist who uses the scientific method to gain information.
Yes, you said you represent science. Do you represent science, Mr. Fauci? Yes or no? Yes or no?
No, that's not a yes or no answer.
Yes, it's a yes or no.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, we'll take that as a you don't know what you represent.
But
this, as director of the NIH, you did sign off on these so-called scientific experiments. And as a dog lover, I want to tell you this is disgusting and evil, what you signed off on, and these experiments that happened to beagles paid for by the American taxpayer. And I want you to know Americans don't pay their taxes for animals to be tortured like this.
No, they do not. They elect Kristi Noem for dogs to be tortured like that. But anyway, look, if Marjorie Greene wants to honestly come out against animal testing, awesome. Bring it on. It's like traditionally kind of a lib thing to do. I don't think that her heart's actually in it. I think this is another convenient position that she's taking that doesn't say anything about principles or values or anything like that. What's going on? It's fairly clear with the way she was talking about, do you represent science? She doesn't understand science. She is deeply scared of it because she doesn't understand it. And so what she's doing is she's grasping for whatever thing her feeble mind can hold on to that she thinks will prove to be an effective weapon against Anthony Fauci. And that will become even clearer here.
Do you think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor, you're Mr. Fauci in my few minutes. No, I don't need your answer. I want to talk about this right here.
Mr. Chairman,
Fauci,
objection.
I reclaim my time. I reclaim my time, Mr. Raskin.
Gentlelady will suspend.
Mr. Chairman,
of order.
Just in terms of the rules of decorum, are we allowed to deny that a doctor is a doctor just because we don't want him to be a doctor?
Yes, because in my time, that man does not deserve to have a license. As a matter of fact, it should be revoked, and he belongs in prison.
Will suspend. The gentlelady should recognize the doctor as a doctor.
Okay, look, honestly, I had a whole big thing prepared that I was going to talk about, but we have to just pause on this because I believe, and have believed for a long time, that I have a pretty good vocabulary. I try. I care about words. I like words. I don't have the words necessary to express how goddamn stupid she is. Like, I just don't know. Maybe people who speak other languages, maybe there's a term in German or in Portuguese for how aggressively and corrosively ignorant she is. We could show you minutes of her talking. She's holding up Daily Mail articles and stuff like that, asserting that he's said things that aren't even in the article, and she couldn't possibly know that because she's not capable of reading. When she talks about science, it's like if I talk about like TikTok trends or like Vanderpump Rules. I know that they exist. I know that they're things, but 2 or 3 seconds into speaking about them, I make clear that I'm out of my element and I shouldn't be talking about them at all. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And the only thing that comes through more than the ignorance is how badly she wants to be clever and how badly she wants to be impressive. She wants to be AOC. She wants to be Jasmine Crockett. She wants to be Katie Porter. She wants to be able to have those moments. And she thinks not only that she's clever, but that she's tough. When she's like, yes or no, I don't need your answer. And then I'm not gonna call you doctor. You're not a doctor to me. You belong in jail. Like, this is not tough. This is not strong. This is Karen barging into a Panera and ruining the workers' day energy. That's all it is. And we have more, but what do you think?
So many things to tackle here. One, I think, to your point, John, she's not very insightful about, what resonates with voters and what will get her positive attention. Cause like she can't even recognize that everybody's moved past COVID-19 and nobody wants to talk about this. Nobody wants to be reminded of that time where we were cooped up in our apartments and lonely and bored and miserable. Nobody wants to think about this. So rehashing this in a way that you think is gonna get you positive feedback because Fauci bad, it's not a good look. And I think her problem that she's not realizing, man, and why I don't think she'll ever be able to ascend past her current station. Like, it's cool to do this maybe once every 3 months. She does this like once every 3 days. And eventually people learn to completely tune you out and move on from all of your outbursts. They all become one thing and nobody cares about any individual thing that you have to say.
Yeah, it's repetitive and it's like, you know what? People who are good communicators or whatever will sometimes, I don't know, like as an extra spice, they might swear a little bit. She just goes to that instantly. Like go to her Twitter, it's just constantly calling people a-holes, and she just doesn't realize or doesn't care or is incapable of transcending the fact that she is one of the classless people in America. And it oozes out of her pores and it infects every word out of her gross little mouth. She's just terrible. And we have more. And there's a moment that's gonna come up that I absolutely love. It comes at the climax of her little speech. And we'll get there in a sec, but first here's the next little bit.
I was going to say what Representative Raskin said. That's completely unacceptable to be able to deny Dr. Fauci, who's here, a respected member of the medical community, his title. And that's actually a personal attack on his character.
And I have instructed her.
He's not respected.
And I've instructed her to address him as a doctor.
I'm not addressing him as doctor. Let's talk about this. I'm reclaiming my time. I'm reclaiming my time.
Words get taken down.
I'm reclaiming my time.
Second that.
Point of order.
Suspend.
He's not respected. Yeah, you don't like him. You don't understand what he did. You don't understand science. You don't understand medicine. That doesn't mean he's not respected. Like it's not strong. Again, he's not a doctor. I'm not gonna call him that. You're an embarrassment. Dear God, if you weren't as incapable of critical self-analysis as you are of reading, you would hear yourself once and you would never speak in public. If I sounded like you when I spoke, I would become a hermit. I would go off into the woods somewhere and I would never speak where another human could hear me because I'd be so deathly afraid that they'd realize how utterly stupid I am. She doesn't have that critical self-analysis, unfortunately. But I want to go to my favorite part, and it takes place in her sort of closing remarks. Take a look at this.
You know what this committee should be doing? We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison, Dr. Fauci.
Did you catch my favorite part? She forgot the thing she was doing. She forgot. I'm not gonna call you doctor. Okay, here's the big final moment. She got this smart. You should be prosecuted. You do war crimes against humanity, Dr. Fauci. Don't. She's so stupid. So stupid. She's like a kid that isn't talking to another kid. So instead, they only tell a third party what to say to the other kid, but then they forget and they directly address the kid. She's that stupid little kid. That's all she is. And again, like it's just everybody she disagrees with, everybody she doesn't like should be prosecuted. And then she'll immediately pivot to it's lawfare against Donald Trump. But literally Hunter Biden, Anthony Fauci, she doesn't know for what. She doesn't know what the crime is. She doesn't have anything, but she doesn't like these people. She's very scared and nervous about these topics that are beyond her comprehension. And so everybody needs to go to prison. Woz, what do you think?
Here's how I know she's not very smart, and it's that there are legitimate gripes with how we handled our pandemic response. One, a couple of things, like if she wanted to speak on behalf of parents whose kids, because of school lockdowns, fell behind in school, I think that's a legitimate criticism of the lockdown. So like, I think that's a legitimate way to be like, yo, man, we could have probably did that better. And guess what, Dr. Fauci, you're the face of that. I think when people go back and look at the actual data on, deaths prevented, et cetera, the lockdowns didn't really work as intended. What worked was getting people vaccinated. The vaccines decreased the freaking deaths. Like, but
she doesn't want that either, Was.
I know, but I'm saying like she could have been like, maybe we were too draconian in our lockdowns, businesses lost money, et cetera, didn't really help in any meaningful way if you look at the actual data. But like she can't even do that. She can't even talk about legitimate gripes that people might have about this, or just to be like, yo, maybe the American workers shouldn't have been forced or lost a job for vaccines. Like, these are legitimate things you could say. Like, people can disagree. I might disagree with that last one, but like, it's legitimate, and like reasonable people might listen to that and be like, okay, she kind of has a point. Maybe Fauci and them kind of took it too far, but she ain't capable. She's just incapable of just common sense, dude.
Well, that's literally true. She's incapable of common sense. And even if she had common sense, she's incapable of communicating in a way that doesn't make her side look utterly unintelligent. Yeah. Like, you can say, and he would say, some of the stuff we did turned out not to be successful, which is a great thing to criticize now with 2020 hindsight. What would Marjorie Greene have had us do in the face of something that hit our shores and started killing tons of people? And I know the answer. Nothing. We wouldn't have tried social distancing or tried masks or tried lockdowns. We would have done literally nothing. Everybody would have gotten sick and more people would have died. And that would almost be ideologically or intellectually consistent with most of what she says about COVID, if that was the end of it. She doesn't think that 1 million people died. She doesn't care about all the people, particularly conservatives, who died. That would be one thing. But she also then wants to go on and say, this was a biological lab leak from China. It was a biological weapon unleashed because of Fauci. That I don't think got many people sick. And I don't think we should have done anything to stop the Chinese biological weapon from racing through our community. She doesn't think it matters, but she also thinks it's a Chinese bioweapon at the same time. It just flip-flops. Should we take it seriously? Well, if it's a Chinese bioweapon, then probably, but we also shouldn't even socially distance. She's angry that people stood away from her a little bit. I don't even think most of that's due to COVID. I think people have been keeping their distance from her for decades. When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?